Today I'm going to sit and talk a little bit about Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which is a book I am absolutely consuming right now, so much so that instead of doing a book talk on a book that I have finished, I'm doing a book talk on a book that is absolutely consuming my life right now. Really into this book. It's been recommended by a number of students over the years, in particular 2 young ladies this year, and I am all over it now. It is a fantasy book that also has elements of the paranormal, also have elements of historic fiction set in World War II, written by a gentleman, I assume a gentleman, named Ransom Riggs. And that name, Ransom Riggs, really reminds me of the author of the series of Unfortunate Events, Lemony Snicket, and how that's kind of really an alias. I love it that there are these like superhero authors that choose to have these little aliases. Really super cool. I don't know if Ransom Riggs is an alias, however, it just reminded me of that. Anyway, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children is chocked full of really interesting voice. It's one of the reasons I like it so much. Even the title, the fact that you've got the word peculiar as opposed to extraordinary, there's something that's got a different voice about that word. Anyway, a brief summary. It is about a child, an ordinary child, a 16-year-old who assumes his life is ordinary until he kind of enters this world that his grandfather had slowly and subtly been feeding to him as a reality, and he finally goes to pursue this world that was a part of his grandfather's past. He originally thought that these stories were fairy tales, but it turns out they are not. And he travels to this world to, in a sense, become a caretaker for this amazing home. And this home, again, something I continue to connect with all the time, is the fact that we've got this home for peculiar children, which reminds me somewhat about Xavier's home of superhero children. As an early X-Men collector, earlier when I was younger, and when I can't avoid temptation now as an adult, you know, I'm reminded about what those early X-Men comics really were about, which were about children who weren't accepted in the world and who had found each other and continued to educate themselves, and there's something about that in this book as well. And I love that it is set to this World War II B story going on. I'm really, really enjoying that. There's some wonderful quotes in this book that show just how wonderfully written that it is. I used to dream about escaping my ordinary life, but my life was never ordinary. I had simply failed to notice how extraordinary it was. And I just can't help but think that this is kind of how we live our whole lives. We forget that we're living our own narrative. We forget we're living in our own story, that we get to write our own story. And we forget that we actually have themes that we can send out to the world for people to read and learn from. And I love that somehow. I think there's a theme here about tolerance. I think there's a theme here also about maybe believing the things that are hard to believe. So maybe there's a theme here about faith. I don't know. Again, I'm not at the end yet, so it's hard for me to say. I would absolutely recommend this book. I think it's beautifully written. The sensory detail, the concrete description is amazing. And again, I love how the plot is intertwined with history as well as the paranormal. Really interesting stuff. I'm going to make one brief comment about the movie real quick, which I haven't seen, and that is this. I find the cover of the book so much creepier than the cover or the movie poster for this book. The movie poster, you've got lots of different characters on there, you've got setting on there, but to me the callback to that 1900s appearance of the grainy shot of children that are forced to keep still because of the limitations of the camera lens, and the slight bizarreness, peculiarities in the photos, to me, that is a much creepier setting than what they have going on right now with the movie poster. So I'm going to kind of be interesting to compare the two, but I've got to finish the book first. That's my rule. Thanks for listening, and this is Mrs. Wolpert-Gawron's book talk on Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Bye-bye.